Something is reshaping every industry in Europe right now. Not one thing, 5 things, simultaneously. And they're not independent, they reinforce each other. They push in the same direction, and together they are changing what gets produced, how it gets produced, where materials come from, and what happens to products when they are no longer useful. Picture any European company you know well. Manufacturing, retail, construction, food, it doesn't matter. Right now, 5 different external pressures are pushing on that company at the same time, each from a different direction, each with its own regulatory stack, its own market dynamics and its own timeline. Most professionals see the effects. New regulations, new customer demands, new requirements from their supply chain, but they don't see the system behind it. Today, I'm going to show you the system. 5 forces reshaping production and consumption across every sector, and for each one, what it means specifically for the roles and competences organizations will need. I'm Anastasia, I read European Union regulations for a living, and I map them against the systems they are changing. Let me show you what I see. In the first video, I gave you a 4-step framework for reading any single regulation as a career signal. Today, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to show you the 5 forces behind all of the regulations at once. Stay with me, because the last 10 minutes of this video are where the career implications get concrete. Let me walk you through the framework I use. Think of 5 forces pressing in from the outside: society, economy, policy, technology, and environment. Each force is changing the conditions under which every industry operates. And inside those 5 forces, 5 areas of production and consumption are already being transformed. Research and innovation, extraction of raw materials, production, consumption, and end of product's life. Let me go through each force with real examples and real career implications. The first force is society, and 4 things are changing simultaneously. Environmental awareness is rising, and it's translating into purchasing behavior, business-to-business sourcing decisions, and political pressure for regulation. This is not soft sentiment. The European Union has embedded it directly into procurement criteria, marketing law, and product legislation. Societal values are shifting toward demanding more from products: durability, repairability, honesty in environmental claims. The Empowering Consumer Directive is a direct legal consequence of this shift. The global middle class is growing by billions. By 2035, 4 billion more people will enter consumption patterns comparable to the middle class. That creates structural pressure on raw materials and energy that old product designs simply cannot meet. And the internet's place in our lives means that information about a company's behavior spreads faster than ever. A supplier scandal, a forbidden chemical finding, a greenwashing case, global within hours. The supply chain doesn't stay in the supply chain, it stays in Google. The career implication: reputation and compliance have become the same problem. The professionals who can navigate both simultaneously, who understand what can be claimed, what must be documented, and what is legally prohibited, are becoming essential across marketing, legal, sustainability, and procurement. The second force is economy. 4 factors are directly hitting business models and cost structures. Raw material prices are rising and volatile. Global demand is increasing faster than supply can respond. Businesses that depend on primary raw materials without a resilient strategy are carrying a risk that is not priced into their balance sheet. New business models are replacing ownership with use. Leasing, product as a service, sharing of equipment and capital goods – these are rational economic responses to expensive materials and expensive disposal. A shift from a consumption-based economic model to a use-based model. And several European Union regulations are now actively incentivizing it. The degree of free trade is under pressure. Consider this: a European importer signed a long-term contract with Chinese steel 2 years ago. Same supplier, same price. This year, CBAM applies. The Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism puts a price on the emissions embedded in that steel. The contract didn't change, but the margin did. That is not future policy. That is current financial reality for importers of steel, aluminum, cement, fertilizers, and hydrogen. And the financial system is changing. Banks and investors are pricing climate risks and regulatory risks into their cost of capital. Businesses without credible transition plans are getting more expensive financing. The career implication? Financial professionals, procurement specialists, and strategists who can work with life cycle costing, carbon exposure, and transition risk are becoming significantly more valuable. These are not sustainability skills, they are commercial skills. The third force is policy. And here I want to say something important. European Union regulation is not bureaucratic noise. It is structural and long-term, driven by supply security, geopolitical autonomy, and industrial competitiveness. Three policy instruments are already changing market behavior. Mandatory targets for recycled content, for design for durability, for repairing obligations, for carbon reduction, for biodiversity, legally binding, not aspirational. Green public procurement. The public sector is one of the largest buyers in Europe. When procurement criteria require life cycle data, digital product passport information, and verified environmental claims, this reshapes what all suppliers must be able to deliver, not just in the public sector, but across every value chain connected to it. Fiscal policy. Producer responsibility fees, carbon pricing, levies on non-recyclable packaging. These are changing cost structures across entire product categories right now. And for professionals in Norway. Norway is a member of the European Economic Area. Almost everything the European Union adopts applies to us. Ignoring Brussels is not a strategy. The career implications? Well, regulatory competence, the ability to read what a regulation actually requires, understand which roles own which obligations, and translate legal text into operational action. It is becoming a foundational competence across all functions, not just for compliance specialists. The fourth force is technology, two-sided, both a driver and an enabler. Energy sits at the center of a double pressure. Fossil fuels carry geopolitical exposure, price volatility, and strategic dependency on unstable regions. At the same time, fossil extraction and combustion are major sources of emissions and environmental degradation. Renewable energy, now cheaper than fossil in most markets, is the response to both pressures at once. It is changing production economics and location decisions for energy-intensive industries fundamentally. Material efficiency and closing loops, chemical recycling, urban mining, material recovery. What was too expensive to scale 5 years ago is becoming commercially competitive. Now consider the next piece. Picture any modern car, a new building, a consumer appliance, like a TV. Even a water bottle now has Wi-Fi. The Internet of Things has embedded IT into products across the board. This is exactly what makes digital product passports technically possible. The regulation didn't create the technology made the regulation inevitable. But connectivity without security is vulnerability. The more products are connected, the larger the attack surface. The European Union Cyber Resilience Act, adopted in 2024, makes cybersecurity a mandatory requirement for all connected products sold in Europe. Both hardware and software must meet security standards before reaching the market. Manufacturers are responsible for security updates throughout the product lifetime. Which means that for every connected product, there is now both a sustainability data requirement and a cybersecurity requirement. The product developer, the IT architect, and the compliance manager all need to be in the same room. Also, biotechnologies are bringing new materials into commercial use. Algae-based materials, biodegradable polymers, materials derived from organic waste streams. Waste itself is becoming a feedstock. The career implication? Technology is removing the excuses that circular, green, or clean solutions are not viable. Professionals who combine domain expertise with digital and data capability, who understand both the technical system and the regulatory framework, are in very short supply.
The fifth force is environment, and the important shift here is from a moral question to an operational risk. Climate change is already measurable in supply chains. Drought on the Rhine stops river freight. Flooding in production regions halts factories. Climate change-induced floods and droughts are periodically disrupting world food production, creating unpredictable trade and volatile prices. Raw material scarcity is structural. Fresh water, fertile soil, mineral deposits, these are not unlimited. Businesses dependent on them without a resilience plan are carrying risk that is not priced into their balance sheet. Greenhouse gas emissions are now a financial risk, not just an environmental one. Investors, banks, and insurers are pricing it, already visible in the cost of capital across sectors. The career implication? Physical climate risk assessment and scenario planning are moving out of specialist sustainability functions and into mainstream risk management, finance, and operations. The professionals who understand these frameworks will be sought after across every sector touching the green transition.
5 forces pressing in simultaneously, from 5 different directions toward the same convergence point. And together they are already transforming 5 areas inside every company, not in theory, but right now. By the end of this video, I will show you exactly which competences are growing faster and why the professionals who have them are about to become scarce. But first, let me show you what is changing in each of the 5 areas in the companies and what it means for the people doing the work. The first area is research, development, and innovation. And here the shift is in what type of innovation is in demand. Research and innovation is now serving 6 directions: climate mitigation, resource recovery, repairing damaged environments, efficient processes and infrastructure, and eco-design service business models. And the last, the redesign of products to a life cycle approach. And this is not incremental product improvement, it is a redesign of what innovation means for organizations. Eco-design is particularly significant. Designing products from the start for durability, repairability, and recyclability, not as an afterthought. And the eco-design regulation makes these legally binding across an expanding list of product categories. Life cycle approach means integrating end-of-life thinking into the design phase. 80% of a product's environmental impact is determined in the design phase, before a single unit is manufactured. The career implication? Innovation roles are changing. The product developer who only optimizes for performance and cost is being replaced by one who also optimizes for material composition, repairability, recyclability, and regulatory compliance. Life cycle thinking is becoming a design competence, not a reporting exercise. The second area is extraction, where raw materials come from. A fundamental shift is happening from primary to secondary materials. 4 changes here: a shift to renewable resources, more secondary raw materials, and more local sourcing, in addition to shorter supply chains. These are not environmental preferences, they are responses to geopolitical risk and price volatility. When 95% of your rare earth elements come from a single country, as is the case for the European Union, supply security becomes a board-level strategic issue. The Critical Raw Materials Act and the Resource EU Action Plan are direct regulatory responses to exactly this problem. Urban mining, recovering cobalt from old batteries, lithium from electronic waste, plastic from packaging waste, aluminum from construction waste, commercially competitive as primary raw materials, prices rise. The career implication? Well, raw material strategy, secondary materials integration, and supply chain resilience are moving from specialist procurement functions to mainstream strategic management. The professionals who understand both the chemistry and the commercial logic of secondary materials are rare and in growing demand. The third area is production itself. 4 directions: resource-efficient and clean processes, waste reduction and collection, distributed manufacturing, and process optimization. Resource-efficient production is driven by both economics and regulation. When raw materials are expensive and carbon has a price, efficiency is not just environmental, it is financial. Waste reduction and collection inside production is transforming how factories are organized. Waste is becoming a resource stream, not just a cost. An industrial symbiosis where one company's waste is another company's raw material are emerging as competitive advantages in process industries right now. Distributed manufacturing. Producing closer to the market reduces transport costs, lowers logistics risks, shortens supply chains. reduces carbon footprint of freight and directly connected to the geopolitical pressure on supply chains. The career implication? Sustainability used to be the department nobody quite understood but everyone smiled at. Now it is inside production, whether it asks for it or not. The production roles growing fastest are those that combine operational efficiency with circular material flows, emission management and regulatory compliance. People who can work across all three simultaneously are scarce. The fourth area is consumption. Three shifts here: a move toward local products, sharing of equipment and capital goods, and support from digital platforms and AI-enabled services. Local products are gaining market share, not only because consumers choose them, but because shorter value chains are easier to document, verify, and communicate. Traceability and transparency are becoming commercial advantages, not just compliance requirements. Sharing of equipment and capital goods, from industrial machinery to consumer electronics. It is a rational response to capital costs and resource efficiency. The shift from ownership to the use that the economy force is driving, consumption patterns are reinforcing. Digital platforms and AI-enabled services are enabling entirely new consumption models. The same platforms that connected consumers to products are now connecting them to repair services, second-hand markets, and leasing services. Career implication. The buyer or category manager who only selects products for commercial margin is being replaced by one who also assesses repairability, documentation requirements, and compliance. Sales professionals who can sell product as a service models need an entirely different commercial skill set than those selling units. And the fifth area is end of life, the most underestimated in terms of career opportunity. Consider this: a company sells you a washing machine, you own it, it breaks in 8 years, you throw it out. The manufacturer never sees it again. That is the old model. Now picture the new one. A company leases you the washing machine, you use it for 10 years, when it breaks, they take it back. They harvest the motor, the steel, the electronics and put them into the next generation of washing machines. That is the same business, but with a completely different product design, a completely different supply chain, and a completely different set of jobs. 5 changes are driving this: a decrease in waste, novel waste collection and usage, material and energy recovery techniques, products used in services returning to the owner, and industrial symbiosis closing material and energy loops. When raw materials are expensive and producer responsibility fees apply to how products end up, designing out waste becomes commercially rational. Products returning to the owner transforms what end of life means for the business. The producer who leases has an incentive to design for disassembly, repairability, and reusability, because they get the products back. Industrial symbiosis, closing material and energy loops, requires coordinators who understand both technical compatibility of material streams and the commercial logic of exchange. The career implication: end-of-life roles like reverse logistics management, refurbishment operations, secondary materials trading, industrial symbiosis coordination are being created right now. They don't have stable job titles yet, and that is exactly when it's most valuable to build the competence.
5 forces, 5 areas, more than 30 regulatory instruments behind them. Here is what I noticed when I mapped them all against the source documents. 6 competences appear again and again, across every force, every area, every regulatory regime. The professionals who develop these 6 will have career mobility across every sector I just described. These are the ones worth naming. System thinking, the ability to see how the 5 forces interact, how regulation in one area cascades into operational, financial, and commercial implications across the organization. This is a scarce competence and the most valuable. Life cycle competence, understanding products from material origin through use to end of life, entering engineering, procurement, marketing, and finance simultaneously. Regulatory literacy, reading what legislation actually requires, owning it operationally, translating it across functions, no longer only for lawyers and compliance specialists. Data and traceability skills. Building and managing the data infrastructure that digital product passport, supply chain due diligence, and carbon accounting require. Sits at the intersection of IT, sustainability, and supply chain. Commercial sustainability skills. Pricing transition costs, quantifying life cycle value, managing carbon exposure, understanding producer responsibility fee structures. Finance and controlling entering new territory. Cross-functional coordination. The ability to lead processes that involve sustainability, IT, procurement, legal, product development, and finance simultaneously. The digital product passport lead I named in the first episode is one example. The supply chain due diligence manager is another. These roles require someone who can sit at the intersection of all of them. Now apply the 4-step framework from one of the previous episodes, not to one regulation, to the whole system. What will companies need to do differently because of these 5 forces? Who will they need to do it? And is that person going to be me? That is how you stay ahead of the job market instead of catching up to it. Society, economy, policy, technology, environment. 5 forces, 1 transition. The professionals who hold the full picture will lead. The ones who see only their slice will execute.